Hi, my name is Angie, and I'm 34 years old, and I've been working with Andre for a little over a month now.
So why did you seek out the help of a personal trainer?
There were a few different factors that led to that, the main one being my health. I am 34 years old, I'm 5 foot 3 inches tall, and at the time I started working with Andre, I was 198 pounds, which is way too heavy for my frame. But I had other health issues that were going on too. I was very low energy. I really only had enough energy to go to work, to come home, take my dog out on a quick walk, eat dinner, and climb into bed. Just did not have energy for much else in my life. I was also on a number of different medications. I was taking sleep aids to help me sleep at night. I was also on antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications for a number of years. One of my biggest health concerns was dealing with stress and anxiety in my life because I have struggled with cutting for years in my life. And at the end of December 2007, my doctors and my therapist and I talked, and after being on medication for a number of years, they felt that it was time to try getting off them. I liked that idea, but in doing so, I gained anywhere from 13 to 15 pounds. I had horrible withdrawal symptoms for over a month and a half, where I had nausea, cold sweats, really awful headaches. I was dry heaving. It was pretty terrible. At that point, I was really alarmed with what medication actually did to my body to make it so dependent that I was having withdrawal symptoms, and I really felt that I couldn't go back on them at any point in my life, that I really need to find healthier ways to deal with stress, to deal with anxiety. And I just needed to be healthier in general. I needed more energy, and I wanted to trim down. Being a single woman who was overweight, the idea of going to a gym was incredibly intimidating, even though I knew that that was probably the healthiest and most natural alternative for me to alleviate stress and anxiety in my life in a healthy way. I just not knowing how to use the equipment, being surrounded by people who were fit and who did know how to use it, just made the gym incredibly intimidating to me. And I just felt that my health was important and I needed to learn how to do things the right way. And all these things led me to look for a personal trainer.
So how did you find me?
That was kind of a process. I'm a girl that likes to do research, so one of the first things I did when I made up my mind to hire a personal trainer was to jump on the web to look for information on personal trainers in the Denver area, and actually to get some big background information too. I had no idea how much this would cost, and I wanted to know if this was something that was even realistic for me to consider. In doing some research, I quickly realized that, at least for me, because I'm not an incredibly independently wealthy woman, that this would be a sizable financial investment for me. I weighed things in my mind, and I realized that if I was smart in who I hired, and if I was smart in how I was spending my money, if I alleviated those trips to Starbucks in the morning, or if I refrained from my addiction to new shoes, that I probably would be able to make ends meet and be able to hire a personal trainer. Making that commitment in my mind and with my finances, I started setting up interviews with Denver area personal trainers, and I became pretty quickly discouraged. I have met with a number of individuals where we had either phone or face-to-face interviews. Pretty immediately, trainers tend to sell you their services. They talked about their certifications, they talked about their qualifications, they talked about what they could do for me. Again, I'm a girl that does research, so I took notes, and after my meeting, I would go and call the schools that these trainers claim to have graduated from and received certification from, and in doing some background checks, I was surprised and disappointed to realize that there are people out there who definitely misrepresent themselves and their qualifications. So in the midst of this, I had filled out an online form requesting information from Denver area trainers, and Andre Williams contacted me. And I knew pretty immediately that Andre was different because the first thing he did when we got on the phone was ask me what my fitness goals were. And that kind of blew my mind because he wasn't jumping in to sell me his services and pressuring me to sign on with him. He really just asked about me and what I was looking for and what my goals were, and took the time to listen to those things. It was only after I had shared those and he had asked a number of questions pertaining them to dig a little bit deeper and to understand what I was looking for, then he started describing himself, what his qualifications were, what his training was, what his services are. And that was a huge difference. The other thing that really set Andre apart, and one of the reasons why I decided to sign on with him, is because he's incredibly professional. For example, he offered me a 1-hour no-charge consultation where I would come and meet with him and further discuss with him what my goals were, and to get to know him a little bit more and what he does, to hear either recorded or to read testimonials, and to also view before and after pictures from his clients to see actual proof of what he does. And what I really appreciated was that Andre offered to me to bring a friend or a family member to that first meeting. You know, one of the first things he said was, if my wife were going off to meet some guy who said he was a personal trainer for a one-on-one meeting for an hour, I'd be really uncomfortable with that. And the fact that he put my comfort and my safety, my peace of mind first was pretty huge. You know, the other thing that Andre does is he likes to equip people with knowledge to educate them. And at this meeting, this first meeting we had, he provided me with an article that was written by a pretty well-known fitness guru about what to look for in a personal trainer. And I was just really blown away by that, because what he said when he handed me that article was, even if you decide not to go with me, I want you to know what you're supposed to be looking for when you hire a trainer. And that meant a lot to me, because it meant that he cared, that he cared for me as a person, as a human being, as opposed to caring more about his bottom line and about signing the dotted line. At no point during this process did I feel pressured or manipulated into signing on with Andre. He actually said during the 1-hour consultation, I tell people to go home and think about things, not to make any decisions here, but to go home and think about things, talk with your family if you need to before you make your decision. And I really appreciate that.
So, Angie, how is it to work with me one-on-one?
You know, it's surprising, and I mean that in a positive way. It's surprising because it's not what I expected from working with a personal trainer. It actually, you know, Andre is incredibly fit. I remember, you know, your first session is where Andre is going to take your measurements. He took my measurements. He put me through a series of physical testing to see where I was at, you know, and to basically help us understand where we wanted to go. So when we met for this first session, he took all my measurements. We went through training, and one thing he said was, one of the physical training things that we did was to see how many bicep curls I could do. And Andre said to me, do you do normal bicep curls or hammer bicep curls? And I said, well, what's the difference? And he took off his sweatshirt and he had one of these muscle tees on, and he said, well, watch my bicep and I'll show you. And he did the two different types of bicep curls, and you could literally see what the difference was because his muscles are that defined. When you have a personal trainer who is that incredibly fit, and me being 5'3" tall and 198 pounds and completely out of shape, the idea of working out a half hour or 45 minutes or an hour with this man terrified me at first, because